Welcome to Falmouth Cares. I'm Troy Clarkson, and along with Bill Zammer, Gary Vacon, and Michael Kasparian, we are here bringing information to you here in Falmouth and beyond to be helpful to both operators and employees of small businesses in the community so that you can wade through the maze of federal assistance and help understand the impacts of COVID-19 on your business, on your operation, and then on your personal wallet. We're very grateful today to have with us Congressman Bill Keating and Bert, Talerman, co-president of the Cape Cod 5, to really share some information on the front lines about what's happening. This is our second show. Last week we provided an introduction and talked a little bit about how the CARES Act was unfolding. We'll bring you more information today, and as long as the pandemic continues to impact our community and our economy, we'll record these shows every week to provide you the latest information. So let's get right to it. Congressman, we're very, very grateful that you took time out of what we know is a very demanding schedule these days to join us and share information with your constituents and our friends and neighbors about the latest on the federal government's attempts to provide some assistance to our small businesses. So I know you do have some timely information to share with us. Please go right ahead.
Well, thank you, Troy, and thank everyone that's on here getting the message out, which is critical at this stage. One of the things we're doing on my Facebook, just for people's reference, we're taking frequently asked questions as they come by and trying to provide understandable answers that can be followed up. Our offices, it's important at the outset, are still open in terms of access. The doors are closed, but we're all equipped to work out there. So if people have individual questions, the Hyannis office is there to help them. Now, the questions we're getting, and number one, we'll let our guest and yourself decide which ones maybe first. There's stimulus money coming, $1,200 to each adult that earns under 75, then it prorates down for the next 20,000 or so. So they want to know when that money's coming. They also, people in business, and they've been devastatingly hit, as we know, in Cape Cod and the islands, because it's so seasonal and so hospitality centered. There's great help in what's called the CARES Act, a $2.2 trillion. I didn't think we'd ever, in my time in Congress, be talking about those kind of numbers on an act, but it's there. The two programs include the economic injury disaster loans, which you can get right through a portal with the Small Business Association, get up to $10,000 there. The application is pretty straightforward. The one that's really commanding the most attention, not just in our area, but around the country, is the Paycheck Protection Program. It's really geared at helping small businesses under 500 employees, as well as helping the employees that work there. Both things serve an economic interest that are compatible. This is a program that's called a loan, and it's there where roughly, just to give people an idea, 2.5 times your monthly payments are the limit. $10 million is another limit. And as I said, 500 employees or less. So you can apply for this loan, and this is the hard part. It's been, I think, 2 business days from this broadcast that our local lenders and banks have had the chance to look at the guidelines and fathom it. I think we'll find out Cape Cod 5 has already been up and dealing with that. What this does, this will allow you to get monies for your small businesses. And it starts as a interest-free, tax-free loan that's not payable for a year. But the important part is this. If you keep the number of employees you had, prior to, I believe, February 15th, we can check the exact date, but on to June 30th, that loan is completely forgiven. It turns into a money-free grant. And that sounds almost too good to be true, but these times demand it. Number one, we have to keep these businesses afloat. This is a survival package, not anything less than that.
Bill, I'll interject. We're looking at FTE, so it's a 30-hour equivalent. So the part-timers, you add all the numbers together to get a 30-hour. If you have 2 15-hour people, that's 1 30-hour FTE. Very important.
That's an important clarification. Thank you, Bill.
And with our industry, And so you're looking at making sure that's there. And if you go into this and you can't quite keep everyone, even with your best efforts, what it is you get to prorate the employees you have kept and get a grant, no loan. And the rest would just be, a loan, no interest loan a year later. So this is important. The problem we're having is it's so popular, and the intent is to get it out as quickly as possible, that small businesses have to have some help. And I hope this broadcast will help as well in getting there. Now, here's my practical advice. If you have an existing business, lender, go there first. Find out if they are in this program. If they are, I think it's in your best interest to work through them. They have your information and can process that. If they don't, there are others. Don't give up and keep doing this. It's done on a first come, first served basis, so that there's a point of concern that the monies would run out as much as that money is. So do that and do it quickly. The purpose of this is not just to act big in terms of what we did, 2.2 trillion, but we have to act swiftly. And by putting it in the hands of the bankers and lenders that are there, that's going to help that, because a lot of small businesses will say, I don't want anything to do with the SBA. I tried those loans before. It's too much. It's too complicated. This is different. This should be easier. It's meant to be easier. So try it. Take advantage of those two things. It's critical. Now, we just got news just hours ago before this broadcast that the Fed has decided to enter in and back these payroll protection program loans. That's huge. That's huge for smaller banks. Now, a lot of the banks are sitting there saying, I'm a little wary about venturing into this. I'm not sure. But if they can sell that to the Fed, that's going to be, I think, a significant change that we just heard of just a few hours ago. I know Bert thinks but I think it'd be very helpful.
That's fantastic. Thank you much. Thank you so very much, Congressman Keating, for that overview, and we'll certainly get back to you. But we have the opportunity, thanks to Bert Talerman here, to really get the perspective of frontline banking. Cape Cod 5 already has a paycheck protection page on its website. So Bert, I know you and your folks are ready to go to service your customers here on Cape Cod and others that need help. So how is this program rolling out locally, and what have you found that you can share with our viewers to be helpful?
Sure. So obviously things are moving very, very quickly. I think all days blend together, and at the same time, it feels a little bit like an eternity. So as we all know, the CARES Act was signed on the 27th of March, and this amazing chunk of stimulus money to help small businesses was part of that. And really in the announcement, almost made it seem like it was available right away. And the SBA, of course, has traditionally been, as the Congressman referred to, a niche lender in many ways, financing startup businesses, a couple of export programs, some key programs that help businesses expand. And now the SBA, all of a sudden, through the banks being responsible for this $349 billion in stimulus money. So the SBA rolled out their initial guidance, a preliminary application on Tuesday night. So I think that was the 31st. And then they came up with another guidance on Thursday evening. So that was the 2nd of April, all geared towards their first day of being able to accept applications on April 3rd. And our team had kind of taken this under Dorothy Savarese, our CEO's leadership, as our top strategic priority for the week. And we were able to launch a portal and get a portal up on our website on early Friday afternoon, and start taking applications, taking in information from our customers, which we then in turn would enter into the SBA's approval system to see if we could get a reservation of funds for our customers through that system. So our folks worked throughout the weekend, dealing with applications as they were coming in, going through that that SBA step, and securing those preliminary funds through the SBA, so that then we can go to the next little piece of underwriting that we have to do. That includes running folks through there's an SBA website to determine, a special website to determine if you have ever defrauded the government or ever not paid on a prior SBA loan or some other government loan which would make you ineligible. So all of those additional checks that lenders have to do before being able to move to close. But I am just happy to say that our team, and again, cross-functional team, so not just your business bankers, the IT team, the strategic support team, everybody, really cross-functional team throughout the bank, our digital team, our banking services, retail banking folks, all working together. At this point, we have been able to secure approvals for several hundred of our business customers, by working through the weekend. We will continue to go through this process so that we can take care of as many customers as we possibly can, and as well as potentially some folks who don't do business with us currently, but who are engaged in business in this area. I think the Congressman's advice very, very, very prudent and very appropriate, because obviously, an existing banking relationship puts one in a better position to be able to help that customer quickly. And then, of course, when you think of how the Congressman described the program, where there really is a grant component to this, the interest in the demand is extremely significant. So the volume, even the volume from just our own customers that we are working with, is very, very high.
Excellent. Thank you. And that's a great overview. Now, the fact that you've been able to already help several hundred of your customers, Bert, I think shows the importance and the immediacy of this program. Congressman Keating, one of the things that we talked about in our prep meeting for this was no roundtable is complete without a techie at the table, right? And so Gary is our tech guy, and he did some simple math, and 349 billion sounds like a tremendous amount of money, and it is. But when you take that amount and extrapolate it over millions of small businesses throughout the United States, do you anticipate there being a round two, Congressman, or will there be additional assistance available if this 349 billion is not enough?
Well, this is actually the third round as it is, the CARES Act. The first one,
right.
8.3 billion immediately getting into research for vaccines and treatment, as well as dealing with unemployment. The second one dealt with families and their needs directly, and this was the big stimulus one for survival. But the small businesses, as individuals, everyone is getting some help, even outside your business. Which brings us to the question: I didn't follow through on the Stimulus Act. When people might get that money. On the 13th of April, the Treasury said they will begin to issue payments. Now, the payments will first go out to people that have direct payment setups, because that's the quickest way to get it out to the most people in the swiftest period of time. So if you're paying your taxes online, or direct payments, or getting your refunds that way, and have that connection, people will start to get that on a week from now, the 13th of April. So they're going to be moving forward. Actually, you'll see it in your accounts. Now, there are people that I push very hard for, and many of them here that I represent, that don't have to pay taxes because of their income and what their Social Security recipients are a big portion of those. Now, they have an existing direct payment structure that's separate from the IRS, and I push very hard with others to try and get them to change the regulations. And just a few days ago, and this is important, they did. So those Social Security recipients that don't have to pay their taxes directly and don't have that direct payment, they're going to get that money. I'm trying to push the veterans that are getting veterans assistance that don't pay their taxes. We're trying to push to get them to change the regulations there as well. And it's important because there's two worlds here with these direct stimulus payments. The people that have direct payments and the people that don't. And it's significant in time. You're going to get it in days, if not weeks, if you have direct payment set up. Unfortunately, if you don't, and you don't pay taxes or fall under those categories, you have to file a tax return for the whole purpose of getting the money. And that delay, as well as using mail, even if you are, it could extend it for many weeks. So, and the intent was to get it to people quickly. So we're doing those things individually, as well as many of the business things we're doing as well. But I just want to emphasize the speed, even though it's caused great challenges to catch up to all these things happening at once. The speed is critical. The economic experts are telling me that the 2.2 trillion really done now, as opposed to a few weeks later even, that's the same as doing it for over $4 trillion, they're estimating, if we waited 2 or 3 more weeks. So this has to get out quickly to people. And I know Bill Zammer knows this. Part of the lessons we learned in 2008 was the fact that businesses ceased to exist. They had to restart. They lost their connection with their employees, and the delays made it very slow to come back. We want a big comeback. And so part of this is the payroll protection plan is not just for small businesses, but to keep that employer-employee relationship that's going to bring us back much quicker. And I know Bill knows that firsthand.
Yeah, and that's a great segue. So, Bill, we've talked in the last week about your plans, and if you don't mind sharing your personal experience with the Paycheck Protection Program and what it's meant for your business.
I would first like to congratulate Bert and Dorothy from Cape Cod 5. Their portal was up and running. It was very easy to apply, and they just were very great, very helpful as compared to some other institutions that still aren't up and running. I just want to say to the residents of Falmouth, the business community cares about what's going on here. And the reason the SBA loan is very important, it's not just for us, it's to keep our employees employed. That's the key to this thing. We want to keep people going. And the additional few dollars that are left there to help out with rent or some utilities are minimal compared to the help of keeping your employees. So let me just say that the SBA loan has a lot of pluses and minuses, more pluses than minuses. For example, I think someone mentioned that number of FTEs. You got to remember, you're talking about bringing back employees, the same number of FTEs that you started with in order to have the forgiveness of this loan. We're going some trying times. So if you had 30 employees or pick a number back on February 15th, I believe that may be the date, and all of a sudden you come into before the end of June and you can't bring that number of employees back, you may not be able to get total forgiveness. It'll be prorated. That's important. The next thing I really want to talk about is that you're also going to be paying the FICA taxes on this money. So that's about 10% of your payroll. So if you're but they're giving you 6 months, they're giving you the end of December to pay part of it, and then until next year and a year to pay the rest of it. So that's very for the second part of that money. And that's a substantial sum of money. It comes out of your pocket right away with the loan. They're giving you the money, but you're going to be paying it back within that 6 months and a year. So again, you're taking on some debt here. As I say, you got to know how many employees you can afford when we reopen here. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's going to happen on Cape Cod on June 1st. I know a lot of things have been canceled. I'm not going to give doom and gloom, but there are a lot of things that are going to change here. And I think that it's very important for right now, as I've been doing for the last all weekend with my staff and my numbers of companies, we're rebudgeting. We're looking at what we can afford. We're cutting expenses going forward. We're taking a serious look at that. And in the meantime, we're also looking at some other things, like, for example, we're reviewing the unemployment status of our employees. So we get this, the Commonwealth sends us a report. And let's say an employee is pulling down $400 or $500 on unemployment a week. They're running out of the benefits right now. They've used them because they've been either under partial unemployment or they've used them somewhere else. So we got to be careful that fund from the Commonwealth is replenished. And I'm not sure what's happening there because it's only so much for each employee. and that's something that needs to be looked at. The other very important part about the good part about the SBA loan is the residual loan that's left. If you've taken down a little bit more than what they have, you've got 2 years to pay that back at I gather it's 1% interest rate now. Bert, I believe that's correct, right? 1%?
You are correct.
Okay, it's 1% interest on, and that's a very valuable thing to have. Bert doesn't like that because he won't make you loans out, but they're going to give a 1% loan out. So probably that'll be the interest rate anyhow. So, but I think the overriding thing is with this whole SBA loan and everything is to preserve cash. You need to preserve the cash. You can't just simply, you look at these employees. This money you're going to get is needed to pay the employees. You got to look at what they're getting for unemployment. You may want to supplement that if they're not making enough to keep your key employees on. And then again, to budget carefully and remember, you got to bring the number of employees back to get forgiveness of the loan.
Yeah, Bill, too, is $600 plus the unemployment amount, too, that's there as part of the CARES Act to try and just keep people surviving and in place. And
It's not going to last long.
No, and well, that's the other thing. One of the discussions we had today in our conference call is, and Troy wanted me to touch on this, and I didn't follow through. Is there another stimulus package coming? And I believe there has to be, and most economic experts think there has to be, not only to see where, fill in where the cracks were on the third big package, the CARES Act, but have a CARES Act 2 that's in place. And one of the reasons to have that is, unfortunately, it's unemployment. It's going to run out.
Absolutely.
And we're looking at figures, for instance, if the unemployment is at 7%, and it runs out, that trigger another 26 weeks. So we just have to keep people with their heads above the water and businesses with their heads above the water, because we have to be able to turn forward. And I'm just fearful too. There's so many small businesses that, in fact, will go out of business. It's just inevitable given the magnitude of what we're doing.
I'm looking at my own situation, and obviously I have some reserves because I'm old and been around for a while. But the younger people who are in business right now, even with the SBA loan, it's going to be really tough. They've come out of the winter; they're normally ready to pay their bills, and this is the good times. And we go into the next portion, and we have not a great summer. You go right back to the fall season again. So it's a real catch-22 for them. It's awful.
Well, but that's a really good point, Bill. And one of the reasons why we have this group together is to share our collective experience. And so, Bill, as one of the more successful business people on Cape Cod, I think the people watching the show should listen and to the advice that you're providing. Because what I hear you saying is to be prudent. And even if you access the Paycheck Protection Program money, remember you need to hold some back for payroll taxes and anticipate that it may not be, June 1st, the lights go back on and it's business as usual. What I think I hear you saying is prepare for it not to be, so that at the end of the summer, you still have the opportunity to keep the business chugging. Is that
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So, Michael, from the Chamber of Commerce perspective, I know you have been on the front lines as well in a different way, answering questions from your members, advocating for them, and you also are attempting to take advantage of the economic disaster loan program. So can you tell us a little bit about that experience and maybe share some advice and thoughts to other small business people who are considering that?
Sure. So, like we had talked about last week, with the Paycheck Protection Plan, that applies to not only businesses that have less than 500 employees, but to nonprofits, 501c3s, of which we have many. In fact, of our almost 600 members at the Falmouth Chamber, I think 80 or so are nonprofits, and then 501c19s that are veterans organizations. And my understanding is now that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Congressman, I think that houses of worship can now take advantage of that. But what's missing, a big piece, were 501c6s, chambers of commerce, and associations, business associations. So obviously we're spending a lot of time gathering, disseminating, and providing information through our website, through eBlast, trying to keep our staffs on board, going in a time where we're just like any other small business. our revenue's not coming in. We're not in a position right now where we're sending invoices out to our members for things because we understand we have to work with them. So we're being affected as well. As I had mentioned last week, Wendy Northcross, the Cape Cod Chamber, has been really instrumental in helping some of the local chambers, and we've all been working together and collaborating. And she had pointed out that the chambers could take advantage of the Disaster Recovery Act. And so, in fact, we did go ahead and apply for that $10,000. Again, if it's used for payroll purposes, it will be forgiven. I found the process to be very easy. It was direct through the SBA, really pretty simple questions that were on there. Took me about 15 minutes maybe to fill out the application. And if they needed additional information, they would email me. And the way it's left, once it's approved, supposedly the money will be in the checking account in 3 business days. As the congressman had talked about, as far as the stimulus checks, this is working the same way. We provide a bank and a routing number, and they'll put the money right in there.
If I could just
Sure.
check this, that with the economic injury disaster loans, now they're used for different things, and it's not the requirement that the Paycheck Protection Program has about hiring people and things. That's there for emergencies right up front.
Right.
And so it can be a sole proprietorship too.
Yeah, and I know one of the first questions was, has your business been affected by this COVID-19 crisis? And obviously for all of us, it has. And I think to Bill Zammer's point too, we've been fielding a lot of questions from our members who are calling saying, should I take advantage of this paycheck protection? What do you think? And the answer is absolutely yes. And, I agree, Congressman. The advice we've been giving our members is to go to the bank that you already have a relationship with and talk to those people there. I did have an opportunity to speak to Steve Peck at Cape Cod 5 last week, who's, I believe, heading up the task force for the PPP, Bert, who gave me some really good information and some good direction. We've been able to pass that along, as well as some of our other local banks who are members. And we've worked with some of our members who have gone through the process, some who have been approved and are getting that money. And the way I kind of explain this and look at this is that not only has Congress increased the amount of benefits that somebody can collect under unemployment, but it's like another shot in the arm with this Paycheck Protection Plan. So I think a way of looking at it is that by applying for this, keeping your people employed, that's also taking pressure off unemployment, because that's money that they're not having to pay out because people are collecting money through the paycheck, through their employees are getting paid through their employers. So I think overall it's very well thought out. Congress did, I think, an outstanding job in not only personally taking care of families, but this backup with the businesses. And I think Gary's got some of the numbers. We had talked the other day about the number of people who'd be collecting unemployment and all, and then how many might, not because of paycheck protection. It kind of all evens out. And I think that in the end, this is going to look, people are going to look back and this is just a Herculean effort, and just kudos to the government for doing this.
Agreed. I mean, this is a time where the government has come together, Congressman, and in our corner of the world here on Cape Cod, there are hundreds of thousands of lives that will be positively impacted by the work that you've done. Before we do get to Gary, I just wanted to follow up on one point, because Bill Zammer talked to us about paycheck protection and Michael talked to us about the disaster loan program. Is it possible, and this is a question either for the Congressman or for Bert or both, if businesses see the need, can they apply for and gain access to both programs?
Yeah, it is possible to do that because that, economic injury disaster loan, that can be for mortgage payments, it can be for rents. You have business obligations. The fact that this is something that's affecting businesses too. The production chain for their products is being interrupted, and they have to pay more now, for instance, because things maybe didn't come from China or other places at the time. That interruption or other places are out of business. So there's real cost. Now, you can't sort of dump. That's the limitation. You can't get it both ways twice. So you can't use it and get it for this expense and then get it and for a payroll expense and then turn around and say, well, I'm getting the payroll expense too. You can't do it twice, but
Sure.
you can use both.
Bert,
So you could spend, you can, like the congressman said, you can use that EIDL loan to get a loan to invest in new equipment or invest in repair of equipment. And then you get your PPP loan for your payroll. And again, I mean, remembering that, this is entirely different from any other economic downturn that I've certainly experienced in my career, from the standpoint of, we had strong employment, we had an economy that was moving well, and this is a health crisis induced, stoppage of basically the global economy. Again, this isn't created by some excess bubble of speculation anywhere. This isn't something these businesses did to themselves. This is the businesses had to slow down, had to in many cases close their doors. Now, what do they do to get back in business?
Bert, the PPP has a forgiveness portion to it. Does the disaster loan have a forgiveness without a straight loan? Differentiate for me the two.
It's forgiveness, Bill. It's just there. You don't have to pay it back.
But the economic injury disaster loan, if you go beyond the 10,000, then that is a loan that you have to pay back. And
So
that economic injury disaster loan is a loan that I believe, off the top of my head, I think those loans can go out as long as like 20 or 30 years.
So, but it's not forgiven. It's a $10,000 loan. You can take more than that, but the first 10,000 is forgiven.
That's right. And it's there. And believe me, businesses need it. They're finding mortgages, the rents, business expenses are up, sick leave. I mean, so many things, and they can just use it right away. That's the beauty of it.
And there are funds still available in that particular bucket.
Yes.
Excellent. Wow.
Great.
So this is fantastic information. Thank you.
Yeah. Say one thing, if I could, that
Of course.
putting everything in perspective, these amazing and unprecedented efforts, let's not get people excited to the fact that these are geared at survival. This is just to try and keep employees and employers afloat. That's where this is. We have a hard road ahead of us. The projections probably, best projections of the economy coming back are geared to the fourth quarter when we'll start to see some impact. So to put it in perspective, but this is a country coming together, realizing that collectively for employees and collectively for our businesses that are fueling the resources for our country and providing necessary funds for people to live. This is the scope of it. This is how bad the situation is. And I don't want people to look back and say, boy, we're still in trouble. It didn't work. This is survival oriented.
I've tried to stay, upbeat on this whole thing, but you're absolutely correct, Congressman. You look at the fact that when we get to the summer, we don't have a fourth quarter on Cape Cod. That's the dead period. And then you walk into the next quarter. So those 6 months from October into next April are the worst times for the Cape's economy. And that's what we're facing right now when we come out of the summer, where we make enough to carry us through that. So you're absolutely correct. And that's why I said preserve cash as much as you can, because at 6 months, and that's going to be, and Mike, you're looking at, that's the tough part right there. It's the hard part.
Absolutely. And, but we're still trying to remain optimistic that we're going to, and Gary's going to talk a little about the curve. I'm really hopeful we're going to have a July and an August. I'm not expecting the numbers to match last year, but we're really hoping. I think the other thing in Falmouth we're looking at least, is part, I think, of the good news is that, 43% of the homes here are second homes. So those folks, if the coast is clear, I think are going to come down, spend summers here. They're going to spend money in restaurants and retail. I agree. I'm cautiously optimistic, Bill, and I'm really hopeful that we can get through all this. This stimulus money is going to enable as many businesses as possible to survive and to try to thrive a little bit through the summer, and just everybody working together. Our message has consistently been to, shop locally, spend locally. When this is all over, people are going to have to continue to support each other. It's really easy to go on Amazon.com and hit that button, but as we've continued to say, we've been working diligently to list businesses that are open, continue to do businesses do business with those businesses that you're accustomed to. Give them a call. A lot of curbside pickup, roadside deliveries, etc. You're right, Bill. It's going to be tough, but I think together as a community, with the backing of the federal and state, I think we're going to get through this. A stronger community, and maybe just better poised for the next time we go around. Better prepared, but.
So I think that's another great segue to you, Gary. So we can see that there are some rough seas behind Bill on his sailboat there.
That's the British Virgin Islands, by the way.
But Michael, behind Michael is a beautiful sunset and some calm seas with the knob there. Yeah.
There you go.
So Gary, you've done a lot of work since we put this informal group together called Falmouth Cares, and really helped us better understand the reason why we're in this period of shutdown and how important it is. And I think that information is important for our small business owners and workers as well, to understand why we have to go through this period so that we can come out on the other side. So could you take a couple of minutes and share with us the work that you've done and help explain where we're at in terms of the spread?
Sure. I'm going to put up a couple of pieces of paper. I'm going to take the screen here for a second. And I'll start with the disclaimer. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So forecasting is an extremely dangerous thing to do. But the data I'm going to show you, not so much a forecast, but it's kind of publicly available data. A lot of different sources listed here. But understand that everyone trying to forecast this thing is working with very limited sample sizes. We've only tested 0.5% of the US population. We're a little bit ahead in Massachusetts, a little over 1%. And these are not random samples, and those of you who understand random sampling that are out there, you know that you can make greater statistical inferences with random sampling. So the forecast uncertainty is really high. I think we talked about this last time, but I thought a graphic might help. And my friends, they're in the tech industry, all trying to understand this. This is the way exponential growth works. It's like compound interest. Except it's happening daily with COVID, right? So if 20% of the people, if the growth rate is 20% per day, how many days does it take to double? Well, the answer is it takes 4 days. If the growth rate is 10%, it takes 7 days. Once the growth rate gets to 1, I mean, that's flat, and the exponential goes the other way. And the way you do this is you take I won't do this for too long, but you take the math is simply taking the growth factor raised to the power of the number of days. And eventually you hit this inflection point and it starts going the other way. So that said, if we look at data that has come out for, public data on growth rates, the growth rates are descending, and that's good. And this is US, New York, Massachusetts is kind of the gray line in there, which we'll worry about the most. But you can see, I mean, it bounces around. And one of the reasons it bounces around is some days we do a lot of testing, some days we don't do as much. So it's hard. You got to kind of blur your eyes and look at the average, but you can see we might be coming down from maybe a 20 to 30% growth rate to maybe closer to a 10% growth rate on the average. Now, the other site that I recommend that people look at, this work was funded by the Gates Foundation, the University of Washington, and they're using this data is being used for people that are planning healthcare utilization. And here's the entire country according to this. And there's a fairly sophisticated forecast by some really good people showing the peak utilization of hospitals and hospital facilities is about mid-April.
This is in Massachusetts, Gary?
Now you're looking at the United States of America.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this is the United States of America.
Oh yeah, I see that top. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to slide up here to Massachusetts.
Okay.
And this is the latest forecast for Massachusetts, which shows peak utilization on April 18th. Now, if you think about it, when people are in the hospital, it's because they've been sick for a while. So one thing to understand is that the people that are going to end up in the hospital on April 18th are getting it right now. So there's no better time to be as compliant with the social distancing as you possibly can than right now.
Hey Gary, this is like awesome stuff. I mean, I just love stuff like this. So when you looking back at the United States map, it looked like the peak period was skinnier how come the peak period in Massachusetts is kind of so much fatter?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think if you look at the New York data, New York is kind of ahead of us. And I'm sorry, I don't have the New York data here, but New York is 1/3 of the US data. Understand? So, and New York is ahead of us. So New York will peak before us. There are states like New Hampshire that will peak more like May 1st. They're behind us, right? So the US is kind of an average of all that, right? Where some states are peaking sooner, some peaking later. Massachusetts, I think one of the reasons it's a little flatter is I think that, we've done a better job than many states in terms of compliance. When they run this model, if you look at the top of this chart here, we closed educational facilities on March 17th, non-essential services on the 24th. The people that built the model would like us to severely implement travel restrictions and lock us up in our houses. But you can see that one of the reasons this is not as peaky is that is not necessarily true in all states in the U.S. And you understand that this is a model, and this is a model built on assumptions, and the assumptions aren't really terrific. I mean, when you're only testing less than 1% of the population, my goodness, and they're at, and we're testing the right, we're prioritizing right. I'm not arguing with the way we're prioritizing at all. We have to prioritize for immediate need, but a random sample would tell us a lot more as forecasters than this, because we're testing people that, have some chronic issue or they're working in a hospital and we need to know, as opposed to just going out and randomly sampling. So what's going to happen? I don't know. One optimistic view is, the worst of this is over in mid-May. Pessimistic view is, it pops up again because, the herd immunity isn't that strong. But I don't know. I'm just presenting you the raw data and ask everybody to hope for the best and plan for the worst and see the data and make their own conclusion.
And Gary, then I guess the other logical question about the data or observation from the data is just the need for facilities significantly outstrips the facilities that are in existence today.
That's correct. These models, the University of Washington model shows that kind of across the country, and it's just a question of when it happens.
Gary, what do you think the implications are for the business community with that tailing off mid-April, opening up?
God, do you want to talk to the entrepreneur in me, or do you want to talk to the guy that's trying to do the numbers?
Both.
Entrepreneur in me is always optimistic and hoping.
There you go. That's right.
But I think we got to watch it. I think the next couple of weeks are going to tell us a whole lot.
Right.
I'll go back to one of my favorite managers that I worked for in one of the Fortune 500 companies that I worked in. That he said to me, "If you have to make a decision, there's a right time to make it. If you make it too soon, you might have more data later. If you make it too late, that's bad too." So to whatever extent you could delay a decision and watch what happens over the next 2 or 3 weeks, that's helpful. We're going to know a whole lot more. Is this really going to peak in mid-April as these models show? Is there going to be a resurgence? I think we're all going to find that out pretty soon. So, I'm worried. And by the way, none of this data I made up. This is all public data, just compiled, and draw your own conclusion. I am not an immunologist or a professional forecaster, but my friends in the technology industry around the country are working with this kind of data and trying to figure it out.
Well, but this is extremely helpful, Gary, and we're really grateful that you're part of this group so that you really can take a lot of complex data and drill down to the details and explain it so that the people watching this show understand the need for why we're staying in and for the social distancing. And people hear the term flatten the curve, but now you've just shown it to us and shown us why it's so very important. So thank you for that.
And I just want to say one other thing to the Congressman. Thank you all in Washington for your hard work here. This is an amazing multi-trillion-dollar package. I never thought I'd see anything like this in my lifetime. And my friends in the tech industry wanted me to say that to you. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. But Troy, I would say that what Gary said is, and he showed in the curve, is so important because people ask me all the time, they say, when do you think we'll begin to get out of this? And they're looking at the calendar. What Gary just represented to me is the way it has to be viewed.
Right.
First, there's 3 big things I see. that'll lead us to be able to make that decision. Number one is that curve that Gary just showed, because we have to see that rate of incidence of the COVID diagnosis is occurring. That has to come down, first of all. The second thing, though, we need greater testing, because that coming down alone isn't enough. Now, we've been helping a company trying to get approvals that will have like a pregnancy test that you will do for the COVID virus. You could do it at home even, and you get the results in 15 minutes. They're using it at Mass General. It's being tested. It's in its last phase. That kind of test that you can get, they're saying maybe $10 to $20 it'll cost. That's important because you're asymptomatic and still shedding this virus. So we have to be able to have that kind of rapid testing to monitor what's going on. The other thing, besides the curve, the testing, is the work with antibodies. Because a couple of things. Number one, as we begin to take the people that have recovered from this, test their blood, test the antibodies, that'll be a way further to make another trace as to what's going on, to see what's there. But it's also going to be extremely important for treatment, because if they can use those antibodies, refine them the way they're doing it, they're using this right now in New York and other areas, they're using that and giving intravenous blood transfers, plasma transfers from these people that were infected to build up the antibodies. So those three things could be critical. When we start to see the curve go down, when we start to have testing that's ready and is rapid and affordable to a mass amount of people. And third, when that antibody research will take the treatment area and save lives, make this less lethal, and also be another way we can trace it. When those things are in place, then we'll have the tools to get out of this. Now, we have to be careful. Gary just mentioned, in Hong Kong, in South Korea, Singapore, they started to open up quickly, and that curve started going up again. Yeah. And that would be disastrous if it surges, because that'll kill the economy. It'll make people's health so endangered and discourage people. So we've got to be careful, but keep those three things in mind if you're looking at when we're going to be starting to move out of this.
Excellent. That's great information. And that's why we formed this group, to continue the dialogue. So we're chatting today, and we'll be having one of these discussions every week, and Gary will be providing those updates. And we're like a well-oiled machine. Another perfect segue. Thank you, Bill Zammer. You can see the logo behind Bill, and you'd think we practiced this or something. So we call our group Falmouth Cares, and there you go. And so the logo you see behind the three of us is the logo that one of Gary's colleagues created for our group, called Falmouth Cares. And this week we'll be launching both what we think is an act of solidarity and a fundraising effort related to Falmouth Cares. We'll be taking delivery of 1,000 t-shirts with this logo, and they'll say Falmouth Cares on it, that have generously been donated by the Zammer and LaRusso families here in town. And we'll be distributing them. The proceeds from the sale of the t-shirts will be split between two organizations, the Falmouth Service Center and Belonging to Each Other, which is a homeless prevention nonprofit here in town. Bill has graciously agreed to have his staff help with the distribution. And so we hope that the folks watching this will go out there and buy t-shirts, not just to support those two great organizations, but to show solidarity in our community. And we want thousands of people in our community to be wearing those t-shirts to demonstrate that indeed, whether you own a small business, work at a small business, or support small businesses, and that encompasses just about everybody in town. We want you to show that Falmouth cares by sharing this logo and wearing a t-shirt.
Troy, let me add, they're $15 a shirt. All the proceeds go to the two organizations fully, and we'll get more if we need more. And if you want to get 10 at a time or something like that, it'd be really helpful for us to distribute that way. If you get 10, you get them to your friends. We're going to try and mail these out as much as we can. But we hope we get hundreds more and just keep having a town show that Falmouth Cares logo. There's no advertising on it. It's a really nice t-shirt, by the way. No advertising on it. It just has the logo on the front and the back.
We'll have one next week, Bill. We'll have one to show up at the show next week.
Great.
Yeah, they'll be all done by then. So
We'll all be wearing them.
Yes, we'll all be
Absolutely.
wearing
I
it. We
think-
printed it in
Bill will
plenty of
send you
sizes.
one.
I think you'll see a lot of them in the Falmouth Road Race this year. A lot of teams wearing these shirts. So
I'm going to send one to Tevis. That's Bill's wife.
Well, and let's keep our first line responders, police, fire, EMTs, and our healthcare professionals who are risking their lives. Let's make sure they get T-shirts. They're in our prayers. We are in a state of eternal gratitude for what they're doing day in and day out right now.
Good idea. We'll do that.
No question, no question. Couldn't have said it better myself, Congressman. Bert, do you have any closing thoughts? We're really glad that you joined us, and hope that maybe in a couple of weeks you'll join us and give us a status update.
Thank you for having me. Great group, and I really can't say anything better than what the Congressman just said, so best to be quiet.
All right. Thank you. And Congressman, we are so very grateful for you spending this hour with us. Many of us know you and know the kind of personal commitment you have to the work that you do. But in times like this, boy, the commitment that you have is more important than ever. And we really, really appreciate it.
Good. And we'll be back to talk about some additional things that we'll be doing.
Great.
Fantastic. So you have an open invite. We tape every Monday afternoon. So I'll stay in touch with you and with your folks, and we'll hope to see you back here soon. Fellas, anyone else want to pipe in as we get ready to close?
Nope. Just stay on after recording.
It will stay on after the recording, yes. But so we thank everyone for being on here. On behalf of our Falmouth Cares group, Bill Zammer, Gary Vacon, and Michael Kasparian, I'm Troy Clarkson, and we are here for you because Falmouth cares. Be well, and we'll see you next week.